In Brussels, the European Commission confirmed that Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had taken part in a key call with US President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders, focusing on Ukraine's future security framework. The discussion came just one day before the highly anticipated Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska, a moment seen by many as potentially shaping the next phase of the war. When pressed on recent reports, an EU spokesperson confirmed that Trump had made a notable commitment. The spokesperson said, "The US president said indeed yesterday that the US would participate." They stressed that the finer details of this offer were for Washington to clarify, but added that Europe's stance was already firmly established. There must be, they said, a robust and credible security guarantee that allows Ukraine to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Referencing von der Leyen's earlier remarks, the spokesperson invoked the so-called steel porcupine strategy designed to make Ukraine completely indigestible to any external aggressor. At this stage, Brussels is waiting to see what emerges from the meeting between Trump and Putin. The spokesperson made clear that we cannot speculate further, explaining that the next steps will be decided once the outcome of the Alaska summit is known. Questions from the press quickly turned to the practicalities. Reporters asked if consultations could be expected on the day after the summit. The spokesperson confirmed there was an understanding that Trump would brief Zelensky and European leaders after his talks with Putin, though no specific schedule had been set. The timing, they explained, would depend on the length of the meeting and time differences. When asked how von der Leyen would follow the developments, the spokesperson said her location was secondary to her constant engagement. Wherever she is, she's always in contact with her team, they explained, adding that she maintains continuous communication with European leaders and President Zelensky. A journalist then sought clarification on what was meant by strengthening the common ground for Ukraine. The spokesperson responded by pointing to key outcomes from the leaders' call. The spokesperson said, "There should be a ceasefire. The current line of contact is a starting point for negotiations." They added another fundamental point. It is for Ukraine to decide on the matter of territorial integrity. Security guarantees, they stressed, were also central, noting that Ukraine's forces must be able to defend their country and welcoming the fact that the US had agreed to participate in such guarantees. They also underlined the importance of continued economic pressure, stating that sanctions work. We have already 18 sanctions packages implemented and are currently working on a 19th. The European Union, the spokesperson said, would maintain military support and scale up defence investments in both Ukraine and Europe. We will continue to make all efforts to ensure that Ukraine is put in a position of strength in the negotiations with Russia if and when they take place, they added, and of course also has the capabilities to defend itself in the long term. A reporter from the international press asked about rumours that the EU might ease sanctions if Russia agreed to a ceasefire or more. The spokesperson dismissed the idea, stating plainly, Europe continues to maintain full pressure on Russia. The discussion briefly shifted to reports that China had imposed sanctions on 2 Lithuanian financial institutions in response to EU measures against Chinese banks allegedly aiding Russia. The spokesperson acknowledged the development but left detailed comment for another official. The conversation then returned to Washington's role. When asked if Trump's pledge represented a diplomatic victory for Brussels, the spokesperson replied, "It is something we welcome. The important aspect is that the US has said they are willing to do so." Any move that strengthened Ukraine's ability to defend itself, they said, was a positive outcome of the meeting. A German television reporter noted the unpredictable nature of Trump's positions and asked how the EU would respond if Friday's summit did not deliver results. The spokesperson referred to von der Leyen's own words, saying, "Yesterday's call was a great call." They explained that it followed weeks of intense engagement, including exchanges between national security advisors and in-person meetings with European and Ukrainian counterparts. The US, they stressed, was very well aware of Europe's and Ukraine's positions on achieving a just and lasting peace and on safeguarding security interests. Asked whether the EU might formally take part in providing security guarantees, including a possible presence on the ground, the spokesperson called such questions premature. They reiterated that EU leaders had already agreed to contribute based on their respective competencies and capabilities and in full respect of international law. On the question of Ukraine's potential membership in the European Union, the spokesperson was firm. They said, "This is a choice of Ukraine. Europe will support them if they wish to continue on the European path." The decision, they added, must ultimately remain with Ukraine and the EU member states. Questions about NATO's role in any security arrangement received a similar response. It was too early to outline specifics. The Alaska meeting, the spokesperson said, was simply a contact between two leaders, and any follow-up would depend entirely on what emerged from that encounter. As the exchange wound down, the spokesperson framed the talks as part of a broader, sustained diplomatic push. The EU, they insisted, would continue to provide military, economic and political support to Kyiv, ensuring it remained strong enough to defend itself and negotiate from a position of strength. For Brussels, the end goal has not changed: a durable peace that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, backed by firm security guarantees and the united backing of its allies.